Good morning, my name is Farah Pandith and I'm the head of strategy at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. I'm here in Melbourne for the Strong City Summit, and I'm thrilled to be able to take part in a series of conversations with mayors and governors from across the world. This morning, I'm speaking with Mayor Burke from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Andy Burke. I'm the mayor of Chattanooga, Tennessee in the U.S.
We're really happy to have you here, and I'm really interested to know how you have felt being part of the Strong Cities Network. What has it meant to you?
Well, the Strong Cities Network has been great for the city. We've learned so much as a result of being part of the network, and particularly as you come to these conferences and you talk to people from all across the globe about the challenges that they face and also the ways that they're addressing those challenges, it provides keen insight on what you could be doing at home.
So give me an example of the kind of conversations you're having with your peers, both in the sessions and outside of them.
I think we're having kind of big conversations and then more granular ones. So the big ones are a little bit more about what's your city like, what are the challenges that you face, but then there are more granular ones about how are you addressing this with young people, what are the specific initiatives that you found to be successful, what are the things that you've tried that haven't worked, which is also a great thing to know. All those kind of conversations help inform the work that we want to do in Chattanooga.
Talk to me about Chattanooga. What kind of place is it?
Chattanooga is a U.S. mid-sized city, so our metro area is about 575,000 people. It's a valley that's surrounded by mountains. It's a beautiful place with a river that cuts through the middle of it, and it has an old feel because we were a steel and foundry town that now has been rejuvenated and finds economic success in a modern economy.
It's an incredible part of the United States, but you've also had some recent challenges around issues of ideology around hate and extremism. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that was like and what you've done in the aftermath?
Yeah, so one of the most horrific days of my life was July 16th, 2015. That was a day that a young man took an assault rifle, several assault rifles, first went to a Army recruiting center in a strip mall where he fired into the area, striking one Marine. Then he took those rifles, moved from that area down to the Naval Operations Support Center, which is actually only about 3/4 of a mile from our police service center, and he attacked that center. At the time, there were sailors and Marines who were doing drills unarmed, because when they do these drills, they don't necessarily have their weapons with them. And so he attacked them unarmed and killed 4 Marines and a sailor. This was a horrible moment for our city, but we spent that time to figure out how we responded, and the New York Times and others have talked about the way that Chattanooga came back from that and really addressed the issues that we saw because of the hate of that young man.
How did you do it?
Well, I think the first thing that we did was we tried to establish some rules about what we were going to talk about and how we were going to address this as a community, and then we went out and we executed on it. So one of the first things that we did was say, okay, from this moment on, we're going to keep everybody safe in our community. That means no acts of retribution, no acts of hatred towards Muslims, because my job as mayor and the police chief's job is about keeping everybody in our community safe. Second of all, we made it clear that we weren't going to radicalize anybody in our community as a result of this incident. So we didn't want more Muslims in the community to feel like they were estranged from us because of the way that we responded to this incident. And instead we showed, I think, great cooperation and love with the entire community. And one of the most moving moments of my life was at a vigil a couple days after the incident, where the leader of the Muslim community got up and in a house of worship with thousands of people there and said, "Tonight is the last night of Ramadan. I would normally be in the mosque at this moment, but tonight I am a Chattanoogan first and a Muslim second." And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Those kinds of moments really affect the city, and everyone there stood up and clapped. And it was, that kind of spirit that pulled us through, and I think set the tone for what our city would be like in response.
Mayor Burke, that's really obviously extremely powerful, and it clearly demonstrates both leadership at the grassroots level by civil society and all kinds of different leaders and NGOs and civic organizations, but certainly also the leadership from your office and what you wanted to do and how you wanted to respond and the tone you wanted to set for your own city. During the Strong Cities Network Summit over the course of the last couple of days here in Melbourne, we've also heard from other elected officials who've had cities that have been the victims of terrorist attacks and all kinds of incidents around the issues of hate and extremist ideology, and you have shared your stories. What have you learned from your colleagues in the network and the responses that they have had in their cities?
Well, number one is I've learned that there's great leaders all across the globe, and I get inspired by hearing them. Yesterday we heard from some mayors who had their cities under siege in the Philippines, and to hear the response that they had and the way that they tried to lead their city through, I think was inspiring to me. Also, the understanding that even with all that going on, they're trying to figure out ways to continue, after they take back their city, how do they continue to move their city forward and not fall back into those kinds of problems. Those things are critical for all of us to understand as we figure out what do we want to be like as a global community, and how do we pull these communities forward. And so for me, I think I continue to learn about the great leadership across the globe. I think on the programmatic level, there's lots of things that we can see, but I love to hear the stories of some of the amazing governors and mayors and how they have led their cities through some of the trials, because unfortunately, and it really is unfortunate, many of us have seen some kind of tragedy in our city over the last several years.
Mayor, we talked during the Strong City Summit about local action plans for this kind of extremism and incidents that take place. And one is a crisis response in terms of what you do at the time of that crisis, but also there's a strategy in place in terms of the kind of ecosystem you want to build in your communities. What are you doing in Chattanooga around both at the crisis time, but also how you are laying the groundwork for the vision you have for the kind of place you want to be in terms of an actual formality of the plan, or in fact partnerships that you have with the grassroots?
Well, the crisis side, we've really spent a fair amount of time debriefing the way we responded to our last incident and talking about how we do it in the future. That's both from a tactical side of what happened in this exact incident to what are the things that we did in response. And a lot of things went right, which is fortunate, but there were also some things that we could do better, and we understand that. I think for the future, we really feel strongly about this prevention piece. How do we prevent anyone in our community from becoming radicalized? And so one thing that we are doing right now is that we've started a Council Against Hate. Excited about what that can accomplish. Really has three main purposes. One is to serve as a constant discussion with the police department about what's going on in our community and how do we respond in real time. A second is all about how do we make sure that marginalized communities in Chattanooga feel like they have a liaison. And the third is how do we advocate for change, not just at the municipal level, but the state and federal level. And we expect the Council Against Hate to take on all these challenges and to do it from the civilian side, not necessarily always from the governmental side.
It's really powerful. And one of the things that we've heard over the course of this summit, and certainly I have heard from different mayors and governors independently, is the need to have these examples of things that they can do in their toolbox. And one of the things that the Institute for Strategic Dialogue is trying to do with the Strong Cities Network is to provide mayors and governors and municipalities across the globe with examples and opportunities to learn from others. What is one thing that you can say that the Strong Cities Network, and in particular a program that you hadn't necessarily thought about, that you thought, boy, that's an opportunity for me to try something new?
Right, well, I hate to stick on one subject, but actually the Council Against Hate is the best example for me, because this was something that the Strong City Network had encouraged me to do with other mayors in the U.S., and we took a resolution to the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and it was endorsed unanimously, and we were going, had meetings at the German Marshall Fund. We're talking about how we did this across the globe, and I started to say, well, wait, while we're doing this, all these mayors around the U.S. and talking to mayors across the globe, why am I not bringing together people in my city to do this exact same thing? And so this is one concrete way that I think the Strong Cities network has really affected what I'm doing and how I do my job every day.
I also want to ask you about sort of the global environment in which we live, with the increase of hate actions around the world and an increase of an us and them ideology that's spread. What do we need to do as a planet to do more to debunk the extremists and also to puncture the ideology from affecting our young people?
Yes, well, I mean, this is such a serious issue, and as an American, coming to these summits, I get such a great sense of what is happening around the globe. But I can also talk a little bit about what's happening in the United States, because we see a tremendous amount of hate and hate crimes in our nation, and it is troubling, certainly to me. So I want to hear from people about what it is that we can be doing better. But I will say that what ISD and the Strong Cities Network are doing is they're empowering local communities to take care of this, and that is such a critical piece of what we need to do in a time where many nations have federal dysfunction. Is how do we empower localities who are on the ground, who know the people. In Chattanooga, I said we have we have several 100,000 people. I still know a whole bunch of people in that community on an individual basis, and so how do we forge those relationships? You can't do that at this huge federal level. You can do that at a municipal level, and I think kind of figuring out how we form those relationships, how we get the word out to everybody that inclusivity is a huge piece of how we need to lead as a nation, not in a divisive way. I think the more that we get that word out, the better off we are.
Mayor Burke, you've been a leader with the Strong Cities Network, and your vision for what can be has been really powerful. I want to thank you for the work that you've done, and I want to thank you for your time this morning with this interview.
Well, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of the network because we've gotten a lot, and it's made our city a stronger place, and that's really what we need.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.